The shingles sitting on top of your house right now, whatever they are, there's a real chance the brand printed on that old warranty paperwork in your filing cabinet has been named in a lawsuit at some point. Not a small, obscure lawsuit either. Multi-state, multi-million dollar, the kind where thousands of homeowners signed on and law firms ran national ad campaigns to find more of them. And the brands involved aren't fly-by-night operations you've never heard of. They're the exact names a roofer rattles off in your driveway during an estimate, the ones stacked in the aisle at the building supply store, the names on basically every third house on your block, the ones printed on the little sample board a salesman hands you at your kitchen table. This is beneath the barcode, preventing you from making expensive mistakes and giving you the fix for the ones you've already made. So instead of building up to some obscure brand you'll never actually get quoted, we're starting with the names you're most likely to already be looking at on a bid sheet right now, the 5 biggest players in the asphalt shingle business, and what's actually attached to each of their names in court records. Then we'll get into 3 brands that working roofers pick when it's their own house getting a new roof. First up, and this is the one you'll see on more roofs in the country than anything else, GAF. It's the largest shingle manufacturer in America by a wide margin, which means odds are decent your current roof, or the one on the house you're about to buy, already has their name on it somewhere in the paperwork. GAF's older generation of timberline shingles, the ones manufactured roughly between the late 90s and 2009, ended up at the center of a large, consolidated legal case over premature cracking, splitting, and tearing, a case big enough that GAF eventually agreed to settle rather than keep fighting it in court for years. On top of that, if you dig through complaint boards, there's a repeating theme with GAF that has nothing to do with any single lawsuit, warranty claims that get approved for materials, but come back with a labor payout that's a fraction of what it actually costs a local crew to do the tear-off and reinstall, sometimes a few $1,000s short of the real bill. If you're being quoted GAF today, that older timberline generation isn't what's on the shelf anymore, but it's worth asking your roofer directly which manufacturing run your specific shingles come from and getting the full warranty document in writing, not the marketing brochure version. Second, right up there in market share, Owens Corning. Their Oak Ridge line, sold under names like Oak Ridge and Oak Ridge Shadow going back to the mid-80s, became the subject of a sprawling class action after homeowners started reporting cracking, curling, and granule loss well ahead of the warranted lifespan. In some cases, a roof that was supposed to last 40 years starting to fail before year 15, which is a genuinely brutal timeline for something homeowners budget decades around. Owens Corning actually tried to argue in court that a prior corporate bankruptcy wiped out its responsibility for the claims entirely, and that argument got shot down on appeal, which tells you how seriously the courts treated the underlying issue rather than just letting the company walk away from it on a technicality. The class period covered shingles installed anywhere from 1986 through 2012, which is an unusually long window, meaning a huge number of roofs across the country ended up potentially eligible. Same advice applies here as with GAF. Current formulations aren't the same product that triggered the lawsuit, but that specific product line and manufacturing era is worth ruling out by name if you're evaluating an existing roof or a used home you're considering buying. Third, Certainty. This one actually splits into 2 separate stories, which is worth knowing because they get lumped together online and they're really not the same issue. The first involves their organic shingle line made with a felt base soaked in asphalt instead of the fiberglass mat used today, sold from the late 80s through 2005, which turned out to blister and crack in a pattern consistent enough that Certainty settled a nationwide claim covering shingles across nearly 20 states, with payouts calculated per roofing square based on how much of the roof was affected. The second newer story involves their fiberglass independent shingles, sold well after the organic line was gone, where a separate set of homeowners alleged a defective adhesive was letting shingles lift and blow off the roof entirely rather than just deteriorate slowly over the years. Certainty no longer makes organic shingles at all, so that first issue is genuinely retired history at this point, but the fiberglass complaints are more recent, which makes them worth actually asking your contractor about rather than assuming the whole Certainty conversation is ancient news. If any of this is making you want to go pull your own roofing paperwork out of a drawer somewhere, that's honestly a great instinct, and hitting like on this video helps it reach other homeowners who should probably be doing the same thing. Fourth, Tamco. Their Heritage line has drawn some of the most persistent legal attention of any shingle on this list. Multiple separate suits filed across different states over roughly the past decade, all describing a similar pattern, shingles cracking, curling, and losing granules well before the warranted period is anywhere close to being up, sometimes within just a handful of years of installation. What makes Tamco's situation a little different from the first 3 brands is timing. This isn't a decades-old, fully resolved chapter sitting in a filing cabinet somewhere. Filings involving Heritage shingles have continued surfacing recently, including newer suits alleging moisture intrusion tied to a design defect rather than just ordinary age-related wear, and some of those cases are still working their way through the courts as of right now. If TAMCO shows up on a quote, that's worth treating as a live, current conversation with your roofer, rather than something you can wave off as old news that got fixed years ago. Number 5 is IKO, another name you'll see constantly, especially through big box retailers where it's often the default option on the shelf, and one with its own multi-district litigation, first over an older organic shingle line similar to Certainteed's, and later over their Cambridge AR products specifically, with homeowners alleging premature blistering, tearing, and delamination showing up years ahead of schedule. That second case wrapped up with a settlement running into the tens of millions of dollars, and notably, IKO agreeing to extend warranty coverage on affected shingles by 5 extra years going forward, plus giving homeowners the option of a cash payment or replacement shingles depending on which made more sense for their situation. If you already have Cambridge AR shingles installed on your home right now, that settlement detail alone is worth 10 minutes of your time to look into, because it could mean coverage you didn't even know you still had access to. Here's the thing worth sitting with for a second. Every one of those 5 names is a brand you'll recognize instantly, and every one of them has a real, documented, multi-state legal history behind at least one product line. That's not a coincidence, and it's not really an indictment of the whole industry either. It's mostly a story about specific manufacturing runs from specific years going wrong, and companies being slow to admit it or drag their feet on fixing it. Asphalt shingle manufacturing turns out to be a genuinely difficult thing to get consistently right at national scale over decades. And the biggest names have the biggest exposure simply because they've sold the most product for the longest time, which brings us to the brands that don't carry that same baggage, the ones roofers actually put on their own homes when nobody's paying them to say a specific name. The first is Malarkey. It's a family-run, Oregon-based manufacturer that doesn't have anywhere near the national name recognition of the 5 brands above, mostly because it stayed regional for most of its history and leaned on quality over massive marketing spend, rather than trying to compete for shelf space at every big box store in the country. Search for shingle defect lawsuits against Malarkey, and you'll come up empty. No organic shingle settlement, no Cambridge-style multi-district case, nothing tying their actual shingles to premature failure in court. The one real black mark on their record is an air quality violation at their manufacturing plant that led to a multi-million-dollar environmental fine a few years back. A genuine issue worth knowing about, but one about factory emissions affecting the surrounding community, not about the shingles themselves failing on anyone's roof once installed. Roofers on the West Coast in particular have quietly favored Malarkey for years for exactly this reason, a clean product track record even without the household name recognition that GAF or Owens Corning carry. The second is Da Vinci Roofscapes. It's a different category entirely, a synthetic composite shingle engineered to mimic slate or cedar shake rather than a traditional asphalt product, which means it isn't really competing directly with the 5 brands above on price at all. What it offers instead is a genuinely different failure profile. Synthetic composite doesn't crack, curl, or lose granules the way asphalt does as it ages, and there's no defect litigation attached to the product because the underlying material behaves fundamentally differently under sun and temperature swings than an asphalt mat does. It costs meaningfully more upfront, and it's a specialty install rather than something every crew in town does routinely on a Tuesday. But for homeowners who've already been burned once by a failed asphalt roof and don't want to gamble twice, it's the option a lot of roofers point towards specifically to sidestep the whole category of problem entirely. The third is Piabco. Worth being straight about this one, Piabco did have its own class action decades ago over a specific shingle line called HO25 and HZ25, sold roughly between the mid-80s and late 90s, which cracked prematurely in a pattern similar to what hit Certainteed's organic line around that same general era. That case is old, fully settled, and tied to a product formulation that hasn't existed in a very long time, closer to 30 years at this point than 20. What's kept Piabco's name coming up favorably among roofers since then is a track record of standing behind current claims without a drawn-out fight, a genuinely strong, non-prorated warranty structure compared to the industry norm most other manufacturers still use, and a company that stayed smaller and more accountable rather than scaling into the kind of size where a customer service call turns into weeks of being bounced between departments. So that's the real picture. 5 names you already know, each one with a real legal history attached to a specific product era, and 3 names that either dodged that history entirely or handled it in a way that actually earned trust back afterward, and knowing which is which before you're standing in your driveway signing a contract is genuinely worth something. If this changed how you're going to read your next roofing estimate, go ahead and hit that like button. Drop a comment and tell me which brand surprised you, whether it's the one currently on your own roof or the one you were about to sign a contract for, because I genuinely read every comment on these. And if you're not subscribed yet, get on it, because this is Beneath the Barcode, and every single week we're pulling apart the industries that count on you never checking the fine print, the lawsuit history, or the 50-year warranty that quietly turns into a few $100s the one time you actually try to use it. Hit subscribe, ring the bell, and we'll see you in the next one. Remember, the brand printed on the shingle wrapper isn't the whole story, and a 50-year warranty is only worth what the company behind it is actually willing to pay out. Sometimes the safest roof isn't the one with the biggest logo on the truck outside your house. Sometimes it's the one that never had to settle anything in court to begin with, quietly earning that trust one uneventful roof at a time.